For the sponge cake, you will need 400 grams of self-raising flour, 400 grams of granulated or caster sugar, 400 grams of softened butter, 8 medium eggs and 4 8-inch cake tins. Beat the butter until fluffy. Add the sugar, mixing until pale and fluffy. Mix in the eggs, then mix in the flour. Evenly distribute between cake tins. You can weigh out the mixture into 4 parts first if you prefer not to guess quantities. Bake in an 180-degree preheated oven for 20 minutes or until a toothpick comes out clean, making sure you turn the cakes halfway through cooking. For the cupcakes, you will need 150 grams self-raising flour, 150 grams granulated or caster sugar, 3 medium eggs and 12 cupcake cases. Combine the ingredients just like you did with the large cake. First add the butter, then the sugar, then the eggs, finally the flour. Distribute between the 12 cupcake cases, then bake in an 180° Celsius preheated oven for around 50 minutes or until a toothpick comes out clean. Leave the cakes and cupcakes to cool thoroughly before decorating, or if making in advance as I did, you can freeze them in containers for up to a month, just defrost a few hours before decorating. For the buttercream, you will need 500 grams of softened butter, 1 kg of icing sugar, 300 grams of melted milk or dark chocolate, finally red and yellow food colouring paste. Whisk the butter until it goes as pale as possible. This could take a while, but will help to avoid the yellow of the butter changing the colour of the food colouring when adding later. Carefully stir in the icing sugar. Stirring first will help stop the sugar flying everywhere. Once slightly combined, use an electric whisk to mix until light and fluffy. It's important to taste test as you go, adding more icing sugar if need be. Finally, use a spatula to stir in any unmixed bits around the edges and bottom. Evenly distribute the buttercream between 2 bowls. I decided to keep the mixture in the larger blue bowl rather than use the small pink bowl to make mixing in the colouring easier. To one of the bowls, add a little yellow food colouring and mix thoroughly. Food colouring does develop over time, so you may want to make the mixture slightly lighter than you want it to be. In the other bowl, mix in small amounts of the red food colouring and melted chocolate. Adjust the amount of colour and chocolate as you go until you get the desired shade. If you don't want to use chocolate, you can always buy a burgundy or brown food colouring paste instead. As with the cakes, I made the buttercream a couple weeks in advance, so added them to containers to freeze. Defrost in the fridge the night before needed. If need be, microwave for around 20 seconds to loosen up to be pipeable. To finish the cake, I bought some edible rice paper toppers online. As moisture reacts to the toppers, I don't like to put rice paper straight onto buttercream unless serving straight away. Instead, I like to stick them onto discs of fondant first. After rolling out the fondant between sheets of baking paper, I cut out discs the same size as the toppers. For the main topper, I used a small plate as a guide, which was the perfect size. For the cupcake toppers, I cut out a piece of white card to use as a guide. After cutting out all the discs, I left the fondant to sit overnight to firm up, which makes it easier to pick up and handle. Cut out the toppers with very clean, completely dry hands and scissors. Dab a tiny bit of water onto the fondant and spread around until it starts to feel sticky. Place the toppers on, then leave them to dry upside down for 30 minutes. This helps stop the edges from curling up. I did the same to the large topper, but it was too big to turn over, so I covered with a heavy saucepan instead. Once your cake has cooled or defrosted, Cut off the domes, trying to make each layer of the cake the same height as each other. As I was adding a Harry Potter pop vinyl figure to the cake, I didn't want the cake to be central to the board, so I had to play around to decide on the best location. Spread a little jam onto the board or whatever you want to use to sandwich your cakes together with, then start layering up the cakes. Next, crumb coat your cake to stop any crumbs ruining the final look. To start, pipe some of the yellow buttercream at the base and between the cake layers before spreading a very thin layer over it all to lock in the crumbs. After that, leave the cake for about 30 minutes so the buttercream can set before you pipe on top. Mark out and gently score the various parts of the cake that you are going to pipe with a very sharp knife. Pipe on the buttercream however you like. I simply piped it from side to side, redoing any parts that look messy. Cut off the domes of the cupcakes, then pipe on the remaining buttercream. To complete the cupcakes, add the toppers, then store in an airtight container until needed. For the main cake, I had a last-minute change of plan. The topper looked far too big when placed on top of the cake, so I took it off and tried something else. I had to play around with the cupcakes and pop figure until I decided on an alternative finish. Once complete, I let the buttercream set, then covered the whole thing in cling film until needed the next day.